Kwe Kwe Greetings. Um, I think I want to take a moment and say thank you to the ancestors uh, for the guidance. Um, so thank you, ancestors. Thank you for your guidance. And may your awakening guide all Indians who seek their full birthright return to them. So Kwe Kwe is Algonquin for hello. In our last very brief video entitled Get Out Part 2, I spoke about my public notice. It has now been published, and it's been published for about has it been even a week? Yeah, I guess it's been about a week. So we will go over that. Now, I will say an Indian has the authority through their birthright to make the claim that they need to make, how they want to make it, in words that they want to use. The Indian is the authority. So what Indians have to do is see their authority as legitimate, because it is. You have to think of yourself as a king or a queen who is speaking as an authority on their land, because that's what you are. So there is no formula. There is no template. You have to jump right in and say what you want and mean what you say. Things will fall into place. At this point, I would say there are no sovereign tribes, so none of them can speak for you. None of them. When I say none, that is N-O-N-E, none. They are bought and paid for. Their mouths have shackles on them. So you really can only do this first as an individual Indian. Every tribe in existence, again, there are no birthright Indians existing on the land. They have been federalized, or they are trying to go by some federal or state laws that do not apply to them. So they are chasing their tails, going nowhere. You have to establish your footing. What is your footing? It is your birthright. So before we look at a sample, my public notice does not have to be your public notice. It would be nice if we could get together and formulate one, but again, you start where you are. You start where you are. You can't speak for other Indians, even if you wanted to. It's going to be disagreements, right? So yes, it would be nice if, Indians could do it as a collective. But hey, as long as we start the process, it's okay. So we do it as individuals to start. It's a good starting place because you get to claim what you want. So then the caveat is you're not beholden to some tribe. And what you will find is that you join a tribe and you learn later that the chief or the leaders of the tribe have one idea of what Indians birthright should be carried out or how it should be uh lived out, and then it doesn't jive with your idea of what it means to be a birthright Indian in America. Again, there are no examples because none exist. Once you are federalized, you are a product of your colonizer. There is just no way around it. Uh, we can say it till we're blue in the face, and we will. Their laws don't apply to you. Let's say it together. Federal laws don't apply to Indians. Let's say it again. Federal laws do not apply to Indians. One more time. Federal laws do not apply to Indians. Okay, so that we got the federal out the way. Let's do it for the state. State laws do not apply to Indians. Let's say it one more time. State laws do not apply to Indians. Once again, state laws do not apply to Indians. Where are we getting this? We're getting it from the Constitution. All the Constitution is really doing when it comes to Indians is telling us where we stand. Indians do not stand under federal or state. We try to do commerce with the corporation, as I've said before. But what the corporation's idea of commerce with Indians was erasing us from the contract. The federal and the state's idea of doing commerce with Indians, the commerce that they were to regulate, well, we should have asked them, what do you mean by regulate? Because the federal and the state thought and still think that regulate means, oh, we take your land, we sell your produce, and we make the profit so we can regulate. And you just become magically African American, and you are no longer part of the contract because you don't exist. That's what the federal and state governments meant when they talked about regulating commerce between Indian tribes and the states. Okay, we thought they meant something else, right? Right. Okay, so we are interpreting the Constitution as it was meant to be interpreted. So what you'll have as of late is when you go to interpret the Constitution, now they're talking about federal cases and state cases, which did not exist at the time the Constitution was written. Why didn't they exist? Because Indians were not part of these court systems. There were no cases for them to refer to. Now they have a bunch of cases since they grabbed Indians into federal and state and international jurisdiction. Now they can talk about these cases. Once again, these cases would not have applied to Indians who existed at the time of the Constitution. Because what? You were not a citizen. You would not have been in a federal court. a district court, a state court. So now they're quoting cases to you because they're going to show you how they frauded you out of being a constitutional Indian. I don't. Let's just say it again. Federal laws do not apply to Indians. Why? Because the Constitution, we only just got this download. We should have been understood what the Constitution was saying. But as we see, no one is really trying to tell us what it means. Now, we will read, before we get to my public notice, we will read a little more of Peter DeRico's book, Federal Anti-Indian Law, because we want to be clearer that we were never supposed to be part of the federal or state system. So what does that mean? That means we were not the republic. We were not part of the republic. The republic is a creation of the federal and state system. They have as we read, a two-system government that was created for Moors and Europeans. The Moors call themselves being Republicans. The Democrats were supposed to be the Europeans. You see, so we did not create it. The Moors told us, as we read from the horse's mouth, Amenhotep Chavez El Bey, he told us, as one of the a member of one of the five civilized tribes, he said, according to their understanding, this two-system government was created by Moors, not Indians. Moors, who created it for themselves and the Europeans they brought here. Okay? So how would that work? It would work like this. You got your King James, right? A whole Negro, right? European, a Negropean. He sends over some quote unquote black Europeans, and he sends over some white Europeans to be his settlers in his colonies. But amongst the black ones, they've been basically told how to set up King James system, which was a two-system government for Moors or Negropeans and Europeans. It's just that simple, y'all. I know they will take a picture of themselves, and then years later they will show us the picture and say, look, that's you making the republic. And Indians will have to ask themselves, well, how come I don't know how it works? What Indian was put in charge to make sure, if we built it, which I'm saying we didn't, but which Indians would have been left in charge to make sure that our interests were kept, our interests were kept in focus here, okay? Which Indians would have had to have bore the burden of making sure that the best interests of Indians were kept valid, were kept functional, were kept alive, were kept intact? That would have been the Iroquois Confederacy, who is the only Indian tribe that gets credit for this system. So who are the Moors? Basically, they're the Iroquois Confederacy. Okay. So they are credited for this system, not all Indians. So once again, they tricked Indians into thinking that it was their creation, the Republic. You sure about that? Again, where were these Indians to make sure we weren't changed into Africans? They just kept silent while that happened, right? Is there something hard to understand about this? Are we so married to the idea that we built this system? Why? Who would want to take credit for this system in the first place? Obviously, it's not tight enough. It wasn't built right. It was built broke. So no, there is no reason, no logical reason for Indians to want to take credit for this broken system that never worked for Indians. Okay, so that's another big clue as to who built this system. Was it someone who looked like you and said that it was you that built it? You know that's what it was. But Indians want to live, I don't know, in some sunken place. They want so bad to believe. Well, it's understandable. We would like to believe we had something to do with this. You don't really want to do that because you would be a traitor to all Indians if you built this system. If there was some kind of tribunal of Indians, you would be found guilty. Why? Because you failed. You failed to keep the best interests of Indians. In this mix, we got very quickly reduced to the lowest level in a foreign caste system. It started out as a republic for Negropeans and a democracy for Europeans, but it reduced to a full out caste system where, wouldn't you imagine, it's the ones that look like us that are put at the bottom. But what you got to understand is that it was someone like us who intended for that to happen because they knew how to tell the difference. We Indians were the ones who got confused when we saw a Negropean thinking it was an Indian. But they knew what the mission was. They knew that they had to sit back and allow us to be misclassified Black, Negro, colored. They know how to work this system. Indians do not. But the great news is we don't have to know. Why? Because we're not part of it. We're not part of it. Read Article 1, Section 2 of the 1787, the 1789, and the 1790 United States Constitution. Again, it was very late in the game, but we finally got the eyes of the ancestors to read for us because we was too brainwashed to see what it said. And it says representatives shall be apportioned based on the total number in each state of free persons, those bound to a number of years of service, 3/5 of all other persons, excluding Indians not taxed. representatives will be chosen, and taxes will be apportioned. I'm sorry, we left that part out. Based on the number of free persons. Were Indians free persons? No, they weren't. Indians were Indians because they're referred to as Indians, not taxed. Free persons are going to be counted along with those bound to a number of years of servitude. 3/5 of all other persons, see, they're setting themselves up for the caste system because they're not saying what kind of persons. It's just 3/5 of all other persons. So they're anticipating that once they turn Indians into some kind of a person, they will be counted at 3/5. So 3 out of 5, basically, right? I believe that's what that meant. But what is this count for? We're just going to try to say it in as many ways possible. It's for representatives in Congress, excluding Indians, though. So that count will not include Indians. Indians are not going to be represented in Congress. This is the message that we're trying to get out. You know, it's right there in the Constitution. Now, again, they'll come years later and reinterpret that. No, it wasn't supposed to be reinterpreted. If Indians are not represented in Congress, that means this whole system has nothing to do with us. It was dropped here. Again, like Malcolm X said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. They just dropped themselves on our ancestral lands and started making a system based on some king who believed that he had divine right, the divine right to just take over other people's countries based on the doctrine of discovery. This is a wonderful thing. Why? That means we make our own laws. We make our own laws. We make our own IDs. I think that's necessary because we just need to show the agents of the crown that we are not subjects to the crown. Okay? We don't need driver's licenses. Okay? We don't need birth certificates. That's for citizens of the federal and state system. We are not citizens in the federal or state or international system. If you haven't figured out by now that the international jurisdiction is the one world government, just drop out of the game. Just drop out now. Yeah, that was the plan, y'all. Our states these United States that are not inclusive of Indians, they are part of a world federation of states. We found out when we read the document on international law. We got tricked, y'all. We got pulled into a jurisdiction that we were never supposed to be pulled in. When you find fraud, it vitiates the contract. So we contracted to do commerce. I think it's time for us to pull out of the deal. Why? Because we were never part of it. We were immediately erased, turned black. So the United States federal government didn't have to deal with Indians in commerce anymore. They just replaced us, and they basically ran our commerce for us, right? And they got all the profits. What did we get? Civil rights? Oh, what's the civil rights? Part of the Bill of Rights. So we didn't even get the full Bill of Rights. Indians, when are you going to realize that you have been royally effed over? You got to get out. You got to get out. Let's see if Peter DeRico can show us some more clues as to why, because I really think Indians have a hard time understanding their position. They it's it yeah. Let's just go to I was thinking we could read the introduction. This is Federal Anti-Indian Law, the Legal Entrapment of Indigenous Peoples by Peter DeRico. Now, he may have the wrong Indian on his cover, but let me tell you, the words apply to real Indians, okay? So he's, we're going to pardon him for getting the phenotype of the Indian wrong. That is someone from Mongolia that we're looking at, right? Or from what do you call it? Asia, North Asia. Okay, clearly this is an Asiatic person, right? This is not the phenotype, the original phenotype of the Americas. Okay. But let's look at the introduction, please. Where is our introduction? Introduction. The plan of the book. Okay. So let's check out what was his plan. Okay, is this big enough? Do we need to make it bigger? Come on now. I think I want to make this bigger, but we having some issue apparently. Okay, let's just start reading. Okay, if you know. Okay, so this is the introduction of federal anti-Indian law. When I tell you he uses that term as if it is the term, because he's seen behind the shenanigans. Okay, I still really do want to I would like to make this bigger, but apparently I'm having some delays. Okay, so let's just start reading. The plan of the book. This chapter provides a guide to the structure and purpose of this book and a hint about its destination. Stories of dispossession and domination of indigenous peoples are often told and often eluded. Is that what he meant? When talking about American history. A crucial part of this genocidal history, one that is rarely discussed, is the story of the legal doctrines underpinning this dispossession and domination. Mr. DeRico is going right to our land, ladies and gentlemen. He's talking about dispossession of our land. When we talk reparations, don't think dollar signs, think land. That will lead you to any kind of monetary gain you are seeking. But for Indians, and I really want to be clear, you better have your eyes on the land and not the money. I'll say it one more time. You better have your eyes on your land and not the money. there's an order here. We just got the order wrong. And we are trained to do so by this very same anti-Indian federal system. We are trained to seek their dollars instead of our land. They control their dollars, and we talked about how. It's very simple. We all know this. Interest rates. They decide what the money is worth. So if we're reaching for something that they control, they end up controlling us. Our land, that is what we want to control. Because then we can talk about what we would like as compensation for the use of our land. Forget your dollars. It comes from a tree that was on my land. You should be paying me to use my trees. You see, the feds think we owe them somehow. Why? After you misclassified me to make me owe you? Are you kidding? You better recognize my position. I think you owe me, sir, madam, whatever your title of nobility is. Let's get back to the book. This book tells that story and examines doctrines that haunt U.S. law to this day in what is known as federal Indian law. You see, Indians waking up, they think that they're going to create some new type of Indian that the federal government won't dominate. You are sorely incorrect, sorely mistaken. If you don't get out, the feds are going to control you. Oh, they might not call you federal, but they'll make up a new word and you'll think you're sovereign. They know, they play with the word sovereign, you know? So as long as you're in a state, living in a state, calling it that you're calling your land a state, you might as well be saying that it belongs to the feds and not you. You better call your land by its name. I live on Algonquin territory, y'all. Algonquin land. I don't even like to use the word territory at this point. I live on Algonquin land, not New York. So this book tells that story that he says is often eluded when talking about American history. It's the talk about the dispossession and domination of indigenous people. He's going to tell that story. The first thing to understand is, as Professor Elizabeth Reese succinctly put it, federal Indian law is not really Indian law. She quoted Vine Deloria Jr.'s famous remark, "What is missing in federal Indian law are the Indians." Oh, well, we know, nobody knows that better than us misclassified Indians, right? We know we're not part of it, but if we insist on being part of it, they'll gladly take us because they'll be dominating us, right? She added, Indians and their tribes are the objects of federal Indian law, not its architects. Another mouthful. Do you Indians understand that you're supposed to be the architects of your law? What don't you understand about that? What don't you understand about that? Feds are not supposed to be making your laws. I'll say it again. The federal United States, they're not supposed to be making your laws. They're supposed to be honoring you and your position. Actually, they're supposed to be allowing you, not allow, what am I saying? Well, in a manner of speaking, they're supposed to grant you. No, I'm still falling into the trap, y'all. You see, I know how hard it is to break out of it. They're supposed to honor your ownership of the land when they do business with you. But this greedy institution decided, no, I'm going to control your land and tell you where to go and how to get there. And furthermore, you're not going to receive any payments for all the produce that we grab off your land. We're going to take that and we're going to say you owe us this anyway. How do I owe you though? If I were on your homeland, then I would owe you like you owe me. Now, what is reparations? It is your land back and the control over it. And for them to retaliate, well, that's just going to be a form of genocide. That's the other thing I want to speak on. Indians are fearful, and I understand the fear because, oh, if we're not part of the federal system, then we're not protected. You better be, because that would mean that this dominating entity has always been out to genocide you, and it would be publicly known now. They have to cooperate to save face. Well, we know that they don't want to, but what else are they going to do? Any kind of, it's almost like, in corporations now they have their they feign well, they got to make it look good, but let's just say now your employer in some way infringes on your alleged rights, right? Within the corporate world, they talk about retaliation and how your employer, they could be guilty of retaliation after you file a claim against them. They cannot just come for you. This is now with, again, they have to mimic, some form of justice, right? So they got to make it look good. So, but the idea is that if you've been found wrong, in the wrong as an employer, for you to now turn around now and fire the employee, he will be able to bring a case against you because he could call it retaliation. If you don't, now you report your employer for infringing on you in some kind of way, and now you don't get work or you're not included on projects. All of that will be looked at now in the light of perhaps it's retaliation. This will be what applies to Indians after they get out of the system. The system can't now say, we're going to pull out all protections for you now because you're out now. No, it would so not be the look, especially after you claim to honor UNDRIP, which, yeah, UNDRIP is great, but it's not great for American Indians. Mm-mm, mm-mm. American Indians have a very unique story from other uh uh quote unquote indigenous people of the world. We started out again with a contract, right? Called the Constitution, right? So we can't just lump ourselves together with all the Indians of the world. Every Indian, or I should say, not all in quote unquote indigenous people are the same. It depends on what kind of agreements they had with their governments. Now, the United Nations is going to come along and just railroad over all of that and try to act like every indigenous person is entitled to the same rights. Not really. Unfortunately, that's a sad reality. Did they have a constitution like we had here? No, they didn't, right? So they're a different situation. I'm trying to tell you, the Moors own the whole world except for America. So those other indigenous people are under different type of contracts, shall we say. When they came here, they were supposed to honor our position. That is not necessarily the case on other land masses. That's why America was always seen so unique and let bring us your poor, blah blah blah, all the lies, right? But still, the point was it was not like other countries that were dominated by monarchs and religion. Okay. So no, you can't just lump all indigenous people together. And if you do, clearly you're just pulling them into a completely different jurisdiction than they've ever seen. And it's international in nature and it's fictitious in nature because it's what? Commerce. It is all commerce. When I tell you they're wiping law of the land off the face of the earth or trying to, that is exactly what I mean. They are not concerned about your birthright. Okay. So we went off on a little tangent, but let's continue reading. So Indians and their tribes are the objects of federal Indian law, not its architects. And federal Indian law's domination consists of laws the United States has come up with to legitimize or shape Indians' conquest. As I said already, this is federal anti-Indian law. This man is not playing with you today. And yet we have Indians are just praising Donald Trump. When I tell you real Indians that he is not your president, well, I'm just talking to the real Indians in the house, okay? Let those other Indians vote. They will be slaves forever, for generations to come. What they're trying to do, Indians in the house that are about being real Indians, they want to get rid of you because you're going to be, if you stand on business, which is your birthright, you will be the authority over these federal Indians because they insist on being slaves. Basically, they're chasing the dollar. And let's just cut to the chase. Let's just cut to the chase. I have to tell this story. It's unpleasant. But a lot of the Indian tribes are what they call 501c3 corporations, right? I had a recently unpleasant dealing with a tribe that I was formerly a member of. While I was with that tribe, I put I put money, I put money toward units of land, uh, you know, to the tune of $900. I had looked up my receipts sent to me by the tribe leader themselves. And when I looked, I've forgotten that I have had put so much money into the tribe for, I believe I purchased, what was it? 3 units of land? Yeah, three units. It would have been 3 homes. But I left the tribe because I didn't want to be in a federal or a corporate tribe because I know that they're going to be dominated by the feds. And I began to realize that that is not the goal of awakening Indians. That's what has already been. Now, Indians have to understand an awakening means something different. You're not going to wake up to a same nightmare, okay? You're awakening to your true position, not to just become part of, for instance, the Cherokee Nation or some other federal Indian tribe. But anyway, to show you how a corporation or corporate structure causes Indians to treat other Indians, I tell my story. So I had left the tribe, and yes, I waited a while because I sensed that there was bad blood between myself and the tribal leader, because I never got a response when I sent my notice of departure, right? I emailed it to the leader and I never heard from them. So I figured, I'm going to lay low and feel this out. But it came to a point where I decided, I'm entitled to my money back as far as I'm concerned. Now, the way I understood it was you can't keep your land after you leave the tribe. That has to go to another tribe member or something. So, but that wasn't the understanding I had of the money I put in. So I asked for it back in an email, a cordial email, a respectful email. I was told by the tribal leader, the chief, that I am a 501c3. I don't have to give you your money back. That was a donation. That was part of your dues. So at one point in the conversation, the $900 I gave, which was separate and apart from my monthly $25 dues, somehow the money I elected to give toward units of property, I was told at the first response that was part of my dues. How is that part of my dues when I paid my dues separately? So we went back and forth. The chief was completely resistant toward giving me my money back. So then what came up next was that was a donation. It's like that's when you start to realize, oh wow, I've been had. I've been had for $900. And this is what Indians do to other Indians once they become corporations. They don't have to have a conscience. They can say, I'm a 501c3. I'm not giving you your money back. But if they cared about Indians, I would think that it wouldn't be about what kind of corporation you are, it'd be the principle. You know what? I'm not going to do another Indian like that. Let me give them their money back. I can easily make that back if the land was ever purchased, and I don't believe it was. It can just be sold to another Indian and the money can be made back again. Right? That's what I thought. I was sorely mistaken. So my warning to Indians who join 501c3s, watch out, because they're going to claim that everything you gave them was a donation or part of your dues. That's not what you were told when you gave the money, but that's what they will say, because what? This is what corporations do to Indians, okay? The thing is, if the money wasn't used for the purpose it was given, say now it was actually true that I donated money. So that donation was to get land. If the land was not bought, then the money wasn't used for what I allegedly donated it for anyway. So that would ruin that idea that it was, just because it's a donation, that means you can't get it back. Not exactly. If you didn't use it for what it was supposed to be donated for, which was I was supposed to, have a units of property, then that's not true. But but again, it's about the principle. The principle is this how Indians do other Indians? Are you going to let a corporate structure allow you to steal my money? And you think you're going to prosper that way? Yeah, so beware of 501c. See, I'm the whole point of videos like this is to show Indians that you don't have to be a corporation because that puts you square under the domination of the federal government. That's what they want. They want you to become federal tribes and 501c3s, where you're not Indians not taxed anymore, but you're tax exempt. That's two different things. It's two different things. Tax exemption and the Indian not taxed standing, legal standing or lawful standing, two different things. Two different things. One is your standing, the other is something that your master is giving you or granting you, tax exemption. It's not the same as being sovereign Indians. Okay, so anyway, let's continue reading. Um, However, okay, so he explains to us, I really liked what he said here. Uh, what is missing in federal Indian law are the Indians. Well, again, misclassified Indians know this more than any other Indian, alleged Indians, right? She added, Indians and their tribes are the objects of federal Indian law, not its architects. Somebody else is making your laws, okay? And they're calling you domestic dependent. How can an Indian be domestic dependent when it's their land? Isn't it the foreign entity that's dependent on your resources, Indians? They're the dependents. You are the owners, but not when it comes to the feds. Okay. So federal Indian laws domination. So Indians and their tribes are the objects of federal Indian law, not the architects. And federal Indian law domination consists of laws the United States has come up with. So Indians have a hard time realizing that they can make their own laws. They just don't get it. But this man was an attorney. Did I fail to mention that Peter DeRico studied law? So when he speaks, he knows what the hell he's talking about. Now he became a professor, but the man is an attorney. He's a lawyer who became a legal professor at I think it's the University of oh Lord, what? Ooh, I forgot. Was it? Begins with a. I think it was. Oh gosh, I forgot which state. It's something with an M, I think. But I'll just put it in a description box. Okay. So federal Indian law domination consists of laws the United States has come up with. How could they come up with our laws when we're not represented in Congress? How does Congress become a plenary authority over Indians that it doesn't even represent? Well, what they do is they remake Indians. They remake them into Native Americans. They remake them into United States citizens. And then that's how they become your big daddy. But they have to rename you first, just like they did with we Indians who are now called black. They renamed us black And then they just took us out of the equation. They put us at the bottom. We have no legal standing at all. We don't, let alone a birthright. We don't have any protections. That's why their authorities can shoot us down, and then justice acts bipolar, or you know, like it got Down syndrome or something. I So that's why the justice looks funny, because they literally they can do whatever they want. There's no laws that protect black things because they're not in the Constitution. What's in the Constitution is Indians and free persons. Now we are mentioned, but you see, the mention does not mean that we are under the jurisdiction. The mention is just to tell them that we are outside of their domination, okay? But of course, they breached the contract. So let's continue. However, as we will see when we examine Johnson versus McIntosh, 1823, the foundation case in the field. So he's a lawyer who can tell you what the foundation case is in federal Indian law that he coined federal anti-Indian law. So he's going to break it down for us. But what we have to remember is, again, at the time of the Constitution, they were not going by any cases when we were called Indians not taxed. That was not based on any cases. We would not have been part of those cases because we would not have been in the federal system. Do Indians understand what I just said? There's no way there was case. So we started out sovereign. There was no case to determine whether we should be Indians not taxed. It was what we were by birthright. So now when cases come along, watch out, because there shouldn't be any cases in this system that dictate how this federal government deals with you. Why? Because you are a separate, for lack of a better word, government. Okay? They knew you were supposed to be that. That's why they made sure you were reclassified, misclassified. Then they mopped the floor with your copper-colored ass. Indians, when I say get out, I mean get all the way out. This is your land. The only way for you to have authority over it is to be in an authoritative position. You can't be your slave master's bed wench. Okay? So let's look at we just looking at this to see the fraud, okay? To see how unjust this federal system treats, how unjustly this federal system treats you once they remake you into a federal Indian. You're not getting your birthright. You're getting something, as he said before, that the United States comes up with to legitimize or shape Indians' conquest. So you're under conquest, y'all. Do you understand that you are under conquest? He's telling you they're trying to legally legitimize your conquest. And what was your conquest based on? You already know, the doctrine of discovery, which has been denounced. Are Indians ready to be sovereign? What they call sovereign? What we just call living in our birthright, basically? Give us our land back, United States, and return Algonquins to their namesake lands on the East Coast. As an Algonquin, it is my uh, duty to speak for Algonquins. No other Indian is going to do that for me. So I have to tell you what I know. And if Indians have no compassion in that, or if they can't see how they factor into that, well, they must be federal. Algonquians have been doubly genocided because they are no longer seen as even ever having been on the East Coast when the Europeans first met Indians on North America. How do Algonquins go from being the first Indians that even saw the Europeans to, oh no, they're in Canada now? How did that happen? Yet Indians want to act like that don't got nothing to do with you. Has everything to do with you. Because once colonizer got in bed with Iroquois, all Indians were misclassified, not just the Algonquins. That is what ended up happening. So federal anti-Indian law does not actually legitimize conquest, but a pretense of conquest. Chief Justice John Marshall expressly stated that in his adoption of the 15th century doctrine of Christian discovery, he described the doctrine as the extravagant pretension of converting the discovery of an inhabited country into conquest. Let's read that again. However, as we will see when we examine Johnson versus McIntosh, 1823, the foundation case in the field of federal Indian law, or what he calls federal anti-Indian law, federal anti-Indian law does not actually legitimize conquest, but a pretense of conquest. Okay. Chief Justice John Marshall expressly stated that in his adoption of the 15th century doctrine of Christian discovery, he described the doctrine as the extravagant pretension of converting the discovery of an inhabited country into conquest. We will see why this distinction between discovery and conquest is jurisprudentially significant. Okay. Chief Justice Marshall constructed federal anti-Indian law domination in 3 early 19th century cases. First came Johnson versus McIntosh, 1823, a property law decision declaring that Native peoples did not own their lands after they had been discovered, quote unquote, by Christian colonists. The second case was Cherokee Nation versus State of Georgia, 1831, which stated that Native nations were not independent of the United States and Native peoples were subject to U.S. guardianship, quote unquote. So this is how their United States, how he says it creates, it comes up with laws. You see, they make it sound legitimate. They call it guardianship. That's not what the Constitution said. The Constitution didn't say anything about the United States federal government being guardians. They said we were not counted to be represented in their legal system. Why? Because we're not part of their legal system. They don't have jurisdiction over Indians. So as we see, both of these cases are way after 1787, right? So there's no precedent case for them to dominate us. I'll say that again. There's no case predating the Constitution that suggests that this federal government has jurisdiction. They did not. It was just conquest, y'all. And the doctrine of discovery, it was a pretense, right? It was what do you call it? Conquest. Discovery was used in place of conquest. So it's the doctrine of conquest. So let's read that last case again. It was in 1831, Cherokee Nation versus the state of Georgia, which said that Native nations were not independent of the United States, and Native peoples were subject to U.S. guardianship. The third case, Worcester versus state of Georgia. A lot took place in Georgia, huh? Declared, this was in 1832, this case declared U.S. ultimate domination over all Native peoples and lands. How do you do that after you signed a freaking constitution where I'm not even represented? But notice, it looks like they keep using Native. They're not saying Indians, right? He's quoting these cases. I don't see the word Indian. I'm seeing Native. Native this. Or am I getting that wrong? Okay, so let's look at the first one again. Okay. Johnson versus McIntosh, 1823, a property law decision declaring that Native people, okay, so there's your first Native people, Cherokee Nation versus state of Georgia, 1831, which stated that Native nations were, okay, so Worcester versus state of Georgia, 1832 declared U.S. domination, ultimate domination over all Native peoples. So they rename you, right? That's how they avoid the law. That's how they avoid the Constitution. They rename you Native. And it's all trickery. It's tricknology is what the Nubians used to call it, right? As the legal historian Paul Finkelman explained, Marshall's years on the court coincided with a relentless push to remove Indians from the eastern part of the United. Oh, he ain't talking about nothing but Algonquins, because they even found replacements for the Algonquins. What I keep seeing is that the five civilized tribes, it's always one of them that's in one of these dramatic episodes in history, like the Indian Trail of Tears. That was the Cherokee, y'all. These are Indians that have already sold their soul to the federal corporation, and then the federal corporation uses them as warnings, right, of some sort. Because it's like, how do I become a federal Indian, then I get sent on the Trail of Tears? How does that work? But they get people to fill in the roles in these plays, right? Meanwhile, the real Indians are just sitting there confused. They're making up a whole history around you. These are Algonquins that were on the East Coast. These were the Indians that were the most problematic for the English colonists. We resisted. The Iroquois did not resist. The Iroquois was like, come on in, come on in. We want that land too. Excuse me. So Indians can turn a blind eye to the plight of Algonquins if they want to. It'll be your own detriment because if you don't learn from what happened, then you're very likely to be a victim of it. And if you think the federal system gave you back what they took once they removed Algonquins, I think you should think again because you're not getting your birthright. Nope. You're getting some pretense of a birthright that is owned and operated by your slave master. As we concluded, the corporate system is a slave making system. Just think about how your day-to-day quote unquote job and how it feels at times when you realize how powerless you are, right? In next to a corporation that just calls all the shots, right? While on your land is the real kicker. Okay. So Marshall's okay. As the legal historian Paul Finkelman explained, Marshall's years on the court coincided with a relentless push to remove Indians from the eastern part of the United States. Yeah, Algonquins will move to Canada. The Iroquois is still there, of course, right? They're trying to act like they didn't get those Algonquin territories in their clutches along with colonizing, but they did. Namely, New York. New York City is Algonquin, whereas New York State, that may be on Iroquois territory, but not New York City and the 5 boroughs. That's all Algonquin. But they've annexed it to the Iroquois territory, right? That's how they do. Now, Algonquins are not even spoken about, except if you talk about Canada. Oh, and the Lenni Lenape, who were also part of this. Lenni Lenape are extremely compromised Algonquins. They become representative of all Algonquins, but they are truly not because basically they're in bed with the Iroquois Confederacy, which is in bed with your colonizer. So the Lenni Lenape compromised. They don't even get the Algonquin creation story right. Come on, Lenni Lenape, y'all talking about a turtle? Because you're compromised. That is not the original story of Algonquins. It is not the original Algonquin creation story. That's how we know Lenni Lenape are just puppets. That's our doppelganger. Once they replace you, that's how they can ignore you because now the replacement is like a freaking Stepford wife. Just do what the colonizer want you to do. Okay. So unfortunately, we have to add the Lenni Lenape to basically the Iroquois Confederacy. They're just the ones who went along with the program to get along, right? Right. Um, so I'm sorry. It was a push, a relentless push to remove Indians, namely the Algonquins, because they're the ones, and I'll keep saying it. Sorry if you don't like it, but I have to speak up for my ancestors. It is us who were removed from the eastern part of the United States. Anything in the 5 civilized tribes that are still there are just puppets of the federal system. They're highly infiltrated Indians. They don't know where they end and colonizer begins because that's how mixed in they are, you know. But it's even beyond blood. It's the mind, the mindset, you know. they don't realize that when colonizer mixes with you, it's all about him, not you anymore. And so you will be like an enemy to all other Indians. You're going to call us uncivilized and all of that, right? So it's like when your family member becomes a Christian and they discard you because they're a Christian. Same thing happened to these 5 civilized tribes. Come on, somebody gotta say it. Let's get real. So Thomas Jefferson developed the idea of Indian removal. That was Thomas Jefferson that did that, founding father. I believe, oh gosh, was he one of the signers of the damn Constitution? We're gonna have to look it up and put it in the description box. Okay. So what do we want to do in the description box? We're gonna figure out what state Mr. DeRico, the author of this book, the attorney, the professor, what university he worked in. Was it Massachusetts? I think it's Massachusetts. University of Massachusetts. I think we got that one, y'all. He's a professor at the University of Massachusetts, I believe. Okay, so the next thing is Thomas Jefferson. Was he one of the signers of the Constitution? Jefferson. Did Thomas Jefferson sign? I know. I would just have to look. I think Benjamin Franklin was. I think George Washington was. So, in other words, he knew better. He knew better. So, once you sign a contract with Indians, now you got to remove them. See, that's the problem. If the contract was with Indians and you go to remove them, you're in breach of contract. You don't remove them. But Indians want to be part of some system that did this. It's like something's got to be wrong. You're not thinking this through. That's why you'll end up a slave for eternity. Because it's a mindset you have. You'll be a slave long after colonizer is gone because of the way you can't see that you have to get out. So it's a mental slavery, which is probably worse than an actual slave. So Thomas Jefferson developed the idea of Indian removal. Under James Madison and James Monroe, the nation's policy of war and removal devastated the Southern Indians. President Andrew Jackson continued these policies. These all sound like founding fathers, y'all, but they're Negropean and or European. Okay. I'm sorry. President Andrew Jackson continued these policies. Marshall's decisions in Johnson and Graham's Leslie versus McIntosh Cherokee Nation versus Georgia and Worcester versus Georgia provided the legal basis for taking all land from Indians. Marshall's decisions, he was the same judge in Johnson and Graham's versus McIntosh. Let's just say Graham versus McIntosh. Wasn't that what it was? It was Johnson versus McIntosh. I'm sorry, Johnson versus McIntosh. His decisions, this judge, Justice John Marshall, Chief Justice John Marshall, his decisions in Johnson versus McIntosh, in Cherokee Nation versus Georgia, and in Worcester versus Georgia, his decisions provided the legal basis for taking all land from Indians. Stephen T. Newcomb said in his 1992 Law Review article, the evidence of Christian nationalism. Let's see. Oh gosh, what did I just do? In federal Indian law. Oh, okay. Stephen T. Newcomb said in his 1992 Law Review article, the evidence of Christian nationalism in federal Indian law, the doctrine of discovery. Wait a minute, did I skip a page? I'm sorry, guys, because okay. Yeah, I think I skipped a page. I think. Let's try this one more time and use the arrow on the right. Stephen T. Newcomb said in his 1992 Law Review article, the evidence of Christian nationalism in federal Indian law, the doctrine of discovery, Johnson versus McIntosh, and plenary power. Oh, that's a long title, right? He says that U.S. law related to indigenous peoples is premised on the ancient principle of Christian domination and a distinction between paramount rights of Christian people and subordinate rights of heathens or non-Christian. How many times have you heard Heru say that they saw us as heathens? That's an actual thing. So federal Indian law, the doctrine of discovery, Johnson versus McIntosh, and plenary power, he said in that book that U.S. law related to indigenous peoples is premised on the ancient principle. The way the federal system looks at indigenous people is premised on the ancient principle of Christian domination. That's what the 5 civilized tribes are, Christian. Okay, that's what the Iroquois Confederacy evidently was. They had become civilized, right? Because they were in bed with the foreign. They no longer, well, actually, no, they still do talk about a turtle, though, right? They may have been a special case, because they're just, excuse me, they're just a storefront, really. Because if we were to go to any Iroquois Indian meetings of these Iroquois, they'd all look Mongolian, right? Because that's the deal. The real Iroquois are now in Congress, I believe. That's what I believe. That they're the black faces in Congress that you see, because they have to be black so they can convince all other Indians to be black, but they would be like the black elite. And so the game is to now convince Indians that they were not Indians. So the trader has to go undercover and pretend to be black. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Okay. So we see that this domination is premised on the ancient principle of Christian domination and a distinction between the paramount rights of your colonizer as Christians and subordinate rights of heathens or non-Christians. So King James. Now, I understand there are Indians who trace their blood to King James. what these Indians have to understand is, even if that's the case, if he became a Christian, he looked at you just like any family member would after they are quote unquote converted, and they can't hang with you no more. But we busy being happy because, oh, I got a royal in the family. Yeah, the one who don't want to be no part to you because you're not Christian. But the real sad part about Indians is that even after they become Christians, nothing changes. You see, I guess you have to be royal and Christian at the same time, meaning you have to go and let that Pope put a crown on your head, which means you're a puppet of the Pope, basically, right? He made you royal, so where's your allegiance going to be? To him, right? See, Indians have to realize sometimes it's not about blood. It really, yes, to a certain extent, but you've got to understand where the breach happens. What makes the breach happen is when Indians give up their traditions to join slave masters' traditions or religions, and then he don't think you are worthy. He think you are hellbound, so he don't want no parts of you, right? You think, oh, I'm done join the civilized world now. I ain't no heathen like you. I don't know you. And yet our Indians are so left with so little that I guess we find some hope in saying that we were related to these quote unquote royals, but they didn't give a shit about you. I mean, they really have us believing that black nobility just lay down and for centuries and let them their whole bloodline be taken over by Caucasians. That's what I think Indians really believe, that Caucasians are like Superman and Wonder Girl, and they just come and they just touch the black nobility and they just fall down and never to appear again. You know, like how the Moors do. You know, we got defeated. Yeah, you got defeated, but did you get mass murder? Because it seemed like you just disappeared. So after you got defeated, then what did you do? Not a damn thing, right? He just sat back and watched us get cremated by Columbus, right? That was the plan, y'all. That's what a skin folk did, okay? They got defeated. Y'all just surrendered, right? Y'all just laid down, forgot that y'all were nobility or whatever, and just said, oh, it must be God's will. They were heathen anyway, so at least my Caucasian sons went over there and made them Christian. I guess there's some good in that. It has to be what they said, y'all, because we never got back up. In fact, they're still pushing the religion of slave master, if in case you haven't noticed. They think Islam is out, it's not part of slave master program. Oh, that's one of the that's the main goal of slave master, because that's the one that says the black man is God. So yeah, when you realize your slave master was a black man who was God, and you realize, oh, uh-oh, oh boy, um, which is so interesting because I think there was a point in Christendom that if you said you were God, even didn't Jesus say he was God and then he was called a heathen? So it's like there's this, double whammy. You can't be you can't get too jiggy with it, because then you'll be accused of being a heathen again, or a heretic heathen. Because I didn't the priest go nuts in the Jesus story when he seemed to indicate he was God. They were like, that's blasphemy. Yet the Moors and the Islam, they do that and don't bat an eye, right? See, that's the conflict between, unfortunately, there's a conflict in the Abrahamic religions, because Islam is Abrahamic. That's another thing. I think we forget, you know. Anyway, let's, you know, let's move on. He described the Christian heathen distinction as the the tacit underlying basis of all subsequent determination of Indian rights. So the foundation of all of the federal law is that Indians are heathens that need to be dominated by Christians. Even after they convert to Christianity, though, that's the irony here. That is the uh, baffling part. Like, I was a heathen, but you're saying that even after I get quote unquote baptized, I'm still seen as heathen. What gives here, y'all? Can't you see you're being sold a big bag of a nothing burger? You can't, can't y'all see that this is some bullshit? Can't Indians see this? Because we ain't heathen no more, right? And we still, it's worse now, it seems. Why is it worse now? Because now we done did everything that was required and we still getting our ass kicked. That's why it's worse. um, it's just a shame, y'all. They ought to be ashamed of themselves, man. Using God to justify all of this shady satanic shenanigans. Shady satanic shenanigans. Uh Boy. In 1986, Professor Robert A. Williams Jr. described the field as a jurisprudence distilled from the heritage of Christian medieval legal mythology. The foundations of U.S. legal doctrines related to indigenous peoples, he said, once revealed, would shame. I did not say they ought to be ashamed. I didn't even see that part. Would shame those who cite them. That moment of shame has not yet arrived. Oh, but it's on the way, y'all. Once more and more Indians start making their declarations, and I really do think you might want to make a personal declaration before you go joining, because you see Indians, you got to watch out for these tribes that are popping up. I just told you the story about a 501c3 that got over on me, right? So you got to declare what you are so that you supersede the danger of being taken advantage by a 501c3 type of federal Indian, you know, even if they're not federally recognized, being a corporation makes you property of the federal system. So it's all federal. Okay. These Indians are living in a world of delusion, a vainglory, proud of what? I don't know, because you're just following slave masters' wishes. That's all you're doing. It doesn't benefit you in any way. You know, it's like you're calling yourself an Indian, but you're not living like one. You're living like a conquered people under your conqueror, and you're trying to actually. It's like you're justifying his genocide of you, because if he's denying you your birthright, that's a form of genocide. He's inviting you to stomp on your birthright as he's stomping on it by becoming some little, you know, creation of the federal system. All corporations are under federal slash commercial laws, not birthright laws, commercial law. It's all commerce. Indians, if you care about the life you have, the air you breathe,
You need to stop being a commercial entity and become a man or woman of the land again, because men and women have birthrights and commercial entities do not. Commercial entities have commercial codes, statutes, regulations, mandates, what do you call it? Uh what do you call it when a president just goes rogue and starts making those what do you call it? I forgot what you call it when they make laws on the spot. Because we under martial law, they can make executive orders. Yeah, those. You're being dominated left, right. Dominated until you get out and stand on your birthright. Your birthright says you are not under the jurisdiction of anything federal, state, or international. Any kind of foreign created entity does not have jurisdiction over you. And it would behoove Indians to not want to join a community of corporations. You have to make the corporation respect your position. See, in their world, they want you to submit to corporate entities. What you're supposed to say is, no, that's not even possible in the real world. Maybe in a fictitious world of dead entities, yes. But as a man or a woman, we're supposed to dominate corporations. But who's dominating corporations, ladies and gentlemen, and Indian brethren? Who is dominating the corporations behind all the noise and all the distraction? That would be your nobility. That would be your Vatican. That's who is pulling rank in the corporations. It's not men and women, because men and women have been made like debt slaves. In other words, they done say you owe the corporation. Now the corporation, they're using up all your resources, yet they think you owe the corporation. So they say, well, no, you can't have no rights because you owe us. And you got to tell them, I don't owe you diddly squat. Get off my land, and that's what you owe me. And what is the gross national product? What is all the money you made while uh occupying my land? Isn't that my money? Or aren't those my resources that you're creating your money from? You know? So let us finish this. Although I don't think this is the end of the chapter. But again, in 1986, I'm sorry, yes, uh, Professor Robert A. Williams Jr. described the field as a jurisprudence distilled from the heritage of Christian medieval legal mythology. The foundations of U.S. legal doctrines related to indigenous peoples, he said, once revealed, would shame those who cite them. That moment of shame has not yet arrived. Well, Indians have to make that moment arrive, but it has to be Indians that are not federal. Federals can't talk about this stuff. And to get in trouble, daddy give them a beating. Tell them go sit down over there and shut up. So they can't speak on this. They get in trouble. They lose their funding of their own freaking land and whatever. Well, I don't know if they're real Indians, but if they're just Moors, this is not their land anyway. But yeah, the United States has not yet repudiated the doctrine that it holds title to native lands by Christian discovery. Now he's just saying, he just told us the United States, that's the federal government, right, has not yet repudiated the doctrine of discovery, basically. The Pope did, but somehow the United States put their fingers in their ear and sang ting-a-ling-a-loo, right? They trying to sell the corporation. So I think their answer to the doctrine of discovery being denounced is, can we get another buyer for the corporation who doesn't know about this stuff? That we could train you how to dominate these Indians forever and ever and ever. Amen. Dear God, amen. The colonizers' God, amen. Not ours, okay? So the United States has not yet repudiated the doctrine that it holds title to. So it's what this lawyer is saying is that this federal government is claiming to hold title to your land based on the doctrine of discovery. So when Indians talk about land patents, get that out your mind, Indians. Your ownership goes beyond that and before that. All of that is based, this lawyer just told you, and this is a lawyer that actually cares for the rights of indigenous people. I mean, yes, he's still not really speaking to the real Indians, but again, this narrative applies to real Indians more than anyone, you know? So again, Indians, when you stand on your birthright, you don't have to talk about land patents. We talk about birthrights, okay? And we talk about the doctrine of discovery has now been null and voided. So your title to my land, you didn't even have the authority to give me a land patent. That has been voided. I don't know if Indians understand. It's big, Indians, but this is exactly what we need. We need something big, big changes, right? So again, all of this is based on the doctrine of discovery. This lawyer is telling you. Now, I know I said this before, but I know y'all need to hear it from lawyers. Now, again, lawyers don't have jurisdiction over us. We just want to listen to the ones who figured out the bullshit, right? Just so we can be rest assured that we can stand on our own 2 feet, which when I say that, I mean our birthright. So even though the Pope has denounced the doctrine of discovery, this lawyer, look him up, Peter Grieco, D, comma, E, I'm sorry, DERICCO, D apostrophe ERRICO, Peter D'Erico. So if you don't believe Heru, because he don't know enough about law, listen to an attorney who is trying to wake you up. It's a very wonderful thing when a lawyer who finds out what he's in starts singing like a sparrow, because he has a lot to say and a lot to teach. And yet we'll have these so-called Indian chiefs just ignore all of this and talk about they're going to vote for Trump. Trump ain't going to do nothing, y'all. But let me just say that one more time for the mind. Trump is not going to do anything. Now, one of my constituents, very important one, did inform me that he would be sending immigrants. And that would be a start. I just don't think he's going. I I think that he's gonna make that promise. We'll have to see what happens. But again, they have to make this look good, y'all. They really do. And I say that respectfully because I do respect the opinion of the people I'm in communication with. When they talk to me about this, but I just have to keep reminding Indians that Donald Trump is not your president. You're not supposed to be in their system voting. According to the Constitution, you're not counted to be represented in Congress. So the Constitution sees you as a separate government from the United States. Now, because of that, the United States would have to give back our land. What they did was create a bunch of Indians that they could control the land of these civilized Indians. See, they don't want real Indians who are not quote unquote federal to control the land because they want to control it. Do you get that, Indians? That's what's happening. They figured, well, if we create these Indians, then they'll still be under us and we could control their land. And they can't, they want to be able to control the money flow, the money. If you were in control, Indians, you would demand, you could actually put this system into some kind of, you know, say you want to squeeze them out. You could make your prices high and they'd have to, you know, go bankrupt and whatever. They don't want you to have that kind of power. How else can they conquer you if you have your land? They can't. But if Indians, if you were in control of all that land they took from you in the South, well, my Indians are from the South as well. We would be controlling our bag, y'all. These northern states depended on the South. We would have been, as we should have been and should be, in control of our money and our you know our posterity, our prosperity, all of that. But the federal government did not want you to have. They want to conquer you, and they want to make whatever profit there is to be made off of your land is going straight to them and their nobility and clergy. Yeah, yeah. You got to get that back, Indians. I'm sorry. You got these federal seeking Indians looking for the quickest way to hell that they think is going to serve them. It's just you're just misguided. You're just misguided. You're going to stay a slave because you're cooperating with your slave master. That's exactly what he wants you to do. You don't have to, and you don't, and you could do it very peacefully because you're standing on the Constitution. But it doesn't have power over you, is the key here. That's what the agreement was supposed to be. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. But you see, here's the thing. Once we see how far they went to bury our existence, this is an entity that can't be trusted. After 500 years of this kind of domination, Indians who still want to work with this entity, they have to be delusional. You need to have your land back and you got to start all over again. You have to start all over again. This, once you pull out, this system will fall because they have fattened their asses from your wages, or from your uh what would have been your commerce. They have profited off of that, and without it, they would cease to really be able. They wouldn't be able to support themselves because they live off of everybody. They live off of having everything. Once you take away everything, they will no longer be in a dominant position, and they won't be able to maintain the extravagant lifestyle that they obviously maintain by taxing people that were not in their system to be taxed. So that it's like they're draining your energy because you work hard, and you America is one of the hardest working plantations on the earth. They got these slaves, they cracking that whip, yo. You are working more than you rest, okay? These the way they have it designed is basically not only are you working, you know, like heavy work hours, but you are working, they're trying to raise the level the what do you call it, retirement age. So that's what slavery would be, y'all. You are dominated for all of your youthful life, uh long hours in the week that other nations don't even, like Spain, they don't have a 40-hour weeks or 7 day, sorry, 5 day work weeks. This is what I've been told, that people who've been there, they don't work like Americans do, that Americans are forced to because we're still being dominated by a colonizer. That's how they're able to maintain such wealth, because they have people working for them like Indians who are not even supposed to be part of their labor intake, like their income. We're not supposed to be contributing to their bag. They were supposed to be uh paying for our goods and growing our bag. They said, what? Not when we serving these nobility and this clergy. They come, we serving them, not you. We came here on their behalf to take your shit under the doctrine of discovery. So y'all probably read all this because I'm just blabbing, right? So let's try to read it together. So the United States has not yet repudiated the doctrine that it holds title to native lands by Christian discovery, nor its claims of ultimate dominion and guardianship. 21st century courts at all levels cite the Marshall Trilogy, those three cases, frequently. Although, see, he's telling us what they're going to even use against us. Now, say we stand up, we make our declarations. This is what they're going to throw at us, and we're going to tell her, and what has that got to do with me? First of all, this is way after the Constitution. I wasn't in your courts. Why were these Indians in your courts to begin with? Did you read the Constitution? Why are these Indians in your court? Oh, because you created them. These Indians really, oh my God. This is why we needed to be woken up. Because if Indians fall for this, they gotta be asleep. They're like in the deepest sleep that you could possibly have, to allow themselves to be taken by this entity just to have them again use you to mop the bottom of the caste system with. So I love it because this attorney is telling us the three foundation cases that this system will use to beat us down to submission. So let's read that again. The United States has not yet repudiated the doctrine that it holds title to native lands by Christian discovery or the doctrine of discovery, nor has it you know like, uh repudiated its claims of ultimate dominion and guardianship. These are just claims that they make over us, y'all, based on nothing but Christian. What they because they Christian. That's why they could do this. So, Indian, what's standing between you and your land is some Christian. Yeah, you go to church every Sunday, right? Yo, some of you Indians be in there falling out, fainting, and talking like gibberish, that you call tongues. And meanwhile, it is the same entity that got you a slave on your land instead of the land owner, and you in there giving your heart and soul to this beast. Sorry, I had to go there, right? Why did I go there, right? Y'all gotta wake up. I'm sorry. You just gotta wake up. You're paying a lot to be a third class Christian, right? Why do I say that? Because if you were a heathen and you converted to Christianity, an Indian should get their shit back. It never happens in the system. This is how crooked and wretched and debased the system is. And yet the doctrine of discovery has been denounced. And this these shenanigans are still going on. Well, no, I done told you I made my declaration and I am following up on it. My dilemma is I have to word my letters to these clergy, but now I'm thinking, why I gotta write something separate? Just send them the damn declaration. That's so I'm debating. Do I want to? I might, knowing myself, I'm gonna want to have a cover letter. You have to let them know, Indians, that they have no jurisdiction, and from there, it's a lot more uh conducive for you getting your land back. You can't get your land back in their system. But if you stand on your birthright, you can demand it back because you're in your proper what they like to call persona as an American Indian. Now, a Moor can't do this because a Moor is from Morocco. See, they got the Moors thinking that they can live on two lands and claim both as their birthright. No, they can't. They can't. Indians will have more power than a Moor in America. Why? Because a Moor is claiming to have originated in Morocco. So therefore, that is their birthright. Point blank, period. If you're calling on Morocco because you're a Moor, you already got the religion of your slave master and you cling to it. That's why you're confused. You know, you got to clear your mind and become an Indian and cut all that crap about being whatever this stuff you're claiming now. Because a lot of Indians are claiming this falsely. They're not actually African. They've just been indoctrinated. But what was awakening was to help people get back home, like Dorothy. You have to. What is the reward for working from home? It is that you have rights there that you don't have on somebody else's land. So when immigrants hear American Indians talking about you going home, that is the best place for you to be because it is there where you can carve out your birthright, but you can't do it on somebody else's land. I can't go to Africa and claim that, oh, this is my land. I can't do that in Africa. I can't because I'm not African. And their government would look at me like, uh, hello, you're not, this is not your land, sir. So that basic rule applies to everyone. You have to find your homeland and then you have to fight for it so that you can live like a king or a queen in your homeland. But you can't be in somebody else's homeland and claim that it's yours and you have the same rights as people that have been here from time immemorial. You just simply don't. That's theft. What it should have been, if it was going to be at all, is that immigrants would be paying tribute to Indians. That's how it would be. Because you have the use of our resources, so that would be how you pay for them. It'd be like rent, basically. You know. But anyway, let's finish reading. Uh okay. So the United States has not repudiated its ultimate domination and guardianship.
21st century courts at all levels, so all courts cite the Marshall trilogy, those three cases, frequently, although the root word Christian is now usually redacted. So they don't want to let you know that this is based purely on a Christian notion that they are supposed to take over your land. They don't use that word in it. See how slick this system is? So they got to make it seem like this is all just the way it is. And it's like that, and that's the way it is, but it's not. So all courts will cite those three cases when they try. So when we Indians go to tell them to give us our land back, they're going to use these cases to say why they can't give it or they don't have to. But this attorney is trying to school us to say all this is based on a doctrine of discovery, which has been denounced. Now, I don't know if the doctrine of discovery was denounced when he wrote this book, though, because it was the doctrine of discovery was denounced in 2023, right? Wasn't it? I believe that was when it was denounced, like March or something. So I don't think his book was finished. But now, that's what we would tell this system. That's what I did say in my public notes, which we hopefully will get to. I'm sorry, I did make a promise to read it, and I will. Okay. So hopefully in this video, uh all levels, courts at all levels cite the Marshall trilogy frequently, although the root word Christian is now usually redacted. See how much power they have? They can redact words. How do you read a case and not use the words in the case? So help me God, this is fraud. Okay. How do you use a case but don't use all the words that was used in the case? Isn't that some kind of obstruction of justice on some level? How do you redact words? Who gave you the authority? Oh, that's right. You have plenary authority to do whatever the hell you want, right? Whether it's wrong, legal, lawful, you just make it up as you go. Guardianship, ultimate dominion. You made that up. So the word Christian is now redacted, as in Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's opinion in City of Sherrill versus Oneida Nation in 2005, where she refers simply to discovery. She wrote, under the doctrine of discovery, fee title to the lands occupied by Indians when the colonists arrived became vested in the sovereign, first the discovering European nation and later the original states and the United States. Did Indians just hear that? Fee title to the lands occupied by Indians when the colonists arrived became vested in the sovereign, first the discovering European nation, Britain, and later the original states and the United States. Notice how she makes a distinction between the original states and the United States. The United States is a corporation. The original states came before the United States. The United States is a separate entity from the states. She's saying that our sovereignty was given to first the discovering European British, right? And later the original states. So it went to the colonizer. Then the colonizer created states and he gave our sovereignty to the states. And then the federal government came along and just like became like the boss hog of sovereignty.
But who did they all get it from? Indians, if you don't get cracking, if you don't get cracking on the JOB, do you see how your sovereignty got divided and taken away from you? This is what what's her name? Ruth Bader Ginsburg said in her opinion. City of Sherelle versus Oneida Nation. So the city takes the land of the Oneida Nation. She didn't say Christian doctrine of discovery. She just said under the doctrine of discovery. But it's a Christian doctrine. And yet we got all our Indians running around as Christians. Do you see the conflict here? You see why being a Christian has basically made you a slave? Because it's the doctrine of discovery, that the Christian doctrine of discovery, that took your land away and made foreigners your new boss, your new slave master. In 2020, in McGirt versus Oklahoma, the Supreme Court relied on the Christian discovery. They're actually using the doctrine of discovery. Well, this is good, excuse me. This is good news for Indians who are down to do some real business in terms of taking their birthright back. We the Pope done denounced all this, so they can't. In other words, they can't use this doctrine of discovery anymore. It's been denounced. So that was, we're learning in this video that their main defense is the doctrine of discovery, which was denounced, y'all. What that mean? Give us our land. We do have what you call fee title, not you. It has to be returned, y'all. It has to be returned. Do Indians want their land back or no? How many Indians, ask yourself, would you take, say, $10 million instead of your land back? And I ask you to ask yourself that because that's what's going to determine whether you get your land back or not. If you're in it for the money, I'm telling you, you have already lost the game. Money is owned by your colonizer. You should be creating the money since you have the bag. You should be determining any quote unquote interest rates. So I think Indians have to sit down and ask themselves, how how much money would it take for you to sell your birthright? Because once you do, you are forever poor. The money will dry up and blow away. The land won't. And after your money is gone, where are you going to live for free but your land? And when you have your land, can't you rent it out if you want to, if you need to? So again, I ask, what's worth more? Millions of dollars or your land? I tell you, this is what's going to make or break your standing as an Indian, the answer to that question. Don't tell me both. That was not the option. If you had to choose, how many Indians would choose the money? Well, that's why you'll remain a slave. Somewhere in your heart, you have to find that moment where you say, no, give me my land and go back home. We have the example of Tulsa, Oklahoma to show us what we can do when we have our land. That was not the only place that was done. That's just the one that they used to terrorize us with because that's the one that got bombed by the federal government. That's why we know about it. The idea is if you know about that, well, then you know what happens when you call yourself being prosperous on your land, when there's a colonizer in town. Indians, it's not that hard to retrain yourselves, to fall in love with your land and crave your land more than colonizer monopoly dollars. If you keep clinging to the creations of the colonizer gets to stay and dominate you. Yes. So let's read that again. In 2020, that's very recently, in McGirt and versus Oklahoma, the Supreme Court relied on the Christian discovery doctrine without even using the word discovery. Instead, it referred to the claim of domination only obliquely, calling it the significant authority of the United States when it comes to tribal relations, as we will see in Chapter 2. Justice Neil Gorsuch hid Christian discovery behind citations. Oh, Lord. As Newcomb pointed out, the religious foundation of the law is seldom, if ever, explicit. See, they can't tell you it was Christian because you would start to question your Christianity, because that's not how Christianity is sold to us lately, right? It's sold as all about love and oh, yeah. Anyway, no, they don't talk about the obeying part, obey your master part. But it's sold to you differently now. Basically you're being sold land in heaven, okay, after you die, right? But they're not telling you the reason why you don't have land here on earth that you were in control of, that you could rent out and make money off of if you needed to. They don't tell you that that's the Christianity that's taking it from you. So it's giving you land in heaven while it takes your land on earth. So he's saying they seldom use the word Christian discovery, and it's hidden behind citations. So they'll just cite a case, but they won't tell you that the case uses the word Christian discovery. So they're hiding. As Newcomb pointed out, the religious foundation of the law is seldom, if ever, explicit. They're not telling you that this is based on Christianity. The fact that you can't get your land back, they're not telling you that Jesus ain't giving you your land back, yo. They don't want to let you know that because they know you in love with Jesus, right? If you found out that Jesus is the reason why you ain't getting your land back, you might not be with that nigga no more. Well, he wasn't a nigga, but now they reimagined him as a Negro, but he started out a whole Greek. Okay. Uh he started out as Serapis before he became Jesus. Jesus is Roman. Serapis was Greek. Um, if ever explicit, it remains out of sight, below the level of conscious awareness. So in other words, even when they say it, it sort of doesn't. They keep it below the level of consciousness. They don't want to focus on it, that this is all based on a Christian doctrine of discovery. They try to make it like it's more legitimate than some old religious archaic religious beliefs, right? They want to make you feel like it's really legit. We have the authority to take your land. It's not just Jesus that said it. It's every law that says that we should have your land, not you, not just Jesus. But we ain't even trying to tell you that Jesus is saying you can't have your land back. Um, it's seldom, if ever, explicit, and it remains out of sight, the word Christian, below the level of conscious awareness. With few exceptions, it is never brought into contemporary discussions of the law. Angelique Eaglewoman, speaking of Canada and the United States, similarly said, what is often glossed over in the property law introductory lesson is the Christian form doctrine of discovery. So in property law, they're not saying that it's based on the Christian doctrine of discovery. That's how they took your land, guys. That continues in full force in both countries, Canada and the United States. The opinions in McGirt and City of Sherrill demonstrate another important point. Christian discovery doctrine in federal anti-Indian law spans the so-called liberal conservative political spectrum in the United States. So whether you're a Republican or Democrat, this is in full force. You're all voting for Trump, not getting your land back, okay? You're not getting anything back. You're getting another nothing burger, okay? Let's read that again. The opinions in McGirt and City of Sherrill demonstrate another important point. Christian discovery doctrine in federal anti-Indian law spans the so-called liberal conservative political spectrum in the United States. Sherrill was written by the liberal Ruth Bader Ginsburg, McGirt by the conservative Neil Gorsuch. As Professor Bethany R. Berger wrote, he cites so many people, man. The more liberal members of the court not only joined, but at times led the charge against tribal interests. So she added, something beyond a liberal conservative bias is going on here. So they both want your land, Republicans and Democrats. Republicans and Democrats. Okay, so y'all thinking Trump is your savior? You're delusional. Take your wake up pill. Take your Indian wake up pill. That's if you're an Indian at all. I told you the ancestors giving eyes out. Go get some. Go get you some eyes. They're free to Indians who want their birthright back. That's the only requirement. You get a whole new set of eyes. So many say, I got my sunglasses all right. I'm chilling with Trump, make America great again. Yeah, okay. You're gonna remain a slave. But let me see, here's the wonderful thing, y'all. These other Indians ain't gonna be able to stop you. Okay. So we don't even have to worry about them. They'll just be our slaves. Say now we need some slaves that look like us. Okay. We just let the federal Indians be our slaves because they are still in commerce, right? So then we're gonna use you in commerce somehow because y'all don't, But again, at this point, I don't even know if they. I don't even know them. They are claiming bloodlines in uh, Somalia and all of this. They are so. See, this is what happens when they get in bed with colonizers. Suddenly, colonizers' history is your history. And now you're talking about your Somalian birthright. Well, you better go over there back to Somalia. You got it really confused. You're Morocco, you're Somalian, you're West African. You just all kinds of African. Didn't go home then. Okay. So, ooh, We getting an education from Mr. DeRico today. We should have read this a long time ago, though. See, we just read his articles, which were good enough, yo. But this is really good as well because he's bringing it, he's bringing it kind of more up to date. His book was more a span of time, and I think this is a little more. He's talking more recent stuff. you know. So again, Indians who think that voting Republican, first of all, you're not supposed to be voting because you're according to the Constitution, you weren't represented and you're not supposed to be represented in Congress. The only way you got to be that is when the government reclassified you and made you a federal thing, or when you incorporated and you became a federal thing, when you became a 501c3 and all of that. So he's showing us that it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a liberal who voted against the Indians getting their land back based on the Doctrine of Discovery, as well as Neil Gorsuch, who was a conservative. They both ain't trying to give you your land back. The more liberal members of the court not only joined, but at times led the charge against tribal interests. So they're trying to say, yes, liberals are a little more vicious, I guess, and leading, but the conservatives are they're not doing anything different. So there you go again, falling for the same old tricks of your slave master. That's why he needed Democrats and Republicans to keep you stupid. And the sad part is it's actually working. How many Indians are talking about what Trump gonna do and how he's better with Trump and blah blah blah? And no, stop it. You're deluding your minds. None of them, especially somebody like Trump. I mean, he's gonna need land to build his buildings on, right? He don't want you to have to owe you nothing, Indian. He got some buildings to build, yo, on your land, okay? So no, he's not going to give you your land. He's going to want to own it and make a profit that you're not getting. Okay? And he's going to indemnify the police. So when they shoot you, oh well. These Indians trying to defend what he's doing with police. Again, you're delusional. You see the track record that police have with the quote unquote black community. Once they get indemnified, you don't think they're going to use that privilege? They already using it. But Trump is going to make it abundantly clear that I got you, bro. I got you. Don't worry about the legal thing. You above the law. You don't have, it's not going to come out your pocket. So that's like, even if he gets sued, but I believe he's making it where they can't get sued and the state can't get sued. Not only is he making it where the police can't get sued, the state can't get sued. So how is that helping Indians? Who's talking about reparations? Well, you ain't going to get them because you ain't in your proper, you can't be a little creation of the federal government and expect them to pay you. No, they're going to find every way. They're going to use these 3 cases and tell you, no, use under the Doctrine of Discovery, which you agree to because you're federal. So there. Now go sit down over there on your land while I still allow you to have it until you find something like oil or gold and I take that from you. Go sit down. The chapters in this book present 4 interrelated arguments. Number 1, federal anti-Indian law is an exception from the rule of law. It is a claim of unlimited U.S. power. This is a lawyer saying this, y'all, not Heru. So when you try to say something stupid, just remember, I'm just reading what the lawyer told me, okay? And you ain't a lawyer, so shut up, okay? And if you are and you are somehow Well, hey, not every lawyer sees this. Now, this man worked in these type of cases, so he has experience. But of course, most lawyers are, let's just say that they don't have the same concern as someone with a conscience, like this man clearly has. So they're going to go with the status quo and the Ginsburg's decision about the doctrine of discovery, even though it's been denounced. But anyway, yeah, when they talk sense like this dude is talking, that's when an Indian should be listening. But some Indians will even resist this. They're trapped in their own pride and ego, I guess. I guess that's what it is. Well, I don't know why you would want to be in a system like this. You must have sold your soul. Maybe that's what it is. You can't. You done already sold whatever soul you had to the federal, right? Is that what it is? Indians anyway. So number one, federal anti-Indian law. Okay, the chapters in this book present four interrelated arguments. Number one, federal anti-Indian law is an exception from the rule of law. It is a claim of unlimited U.S. power. Number two, federal anti-Indian law has facilitated the genocide and attempted genocide, I'm going to say, of American Indians. Because they don't have an agreement with native peoples. They have an agreement with Indians. Okay, so that's who they're actually genociding and replacing us with Native Americans. This is what the lawyer is saying, y'all. Number three, the doctrine of tribal sovereignty is federal anti-Indian law. I'm sorry. Let's read it again. Number three, the doctrine of tribal sovereignty in federal anti-Indian law is really non-sovereignty. It is a relic of native original free existence, restricted and dominated by the U.S. claim of plenary power. So it's the now you see it, now you don't type of sovereignty that we read about in this very same lawyer's article called Indian Sovereignty. Now you see it, now you don't. So he's saying the doctrine of tribal sovereignty in federal anti-Indian law, he could repeatedly calls it federal anti-Indian law because that's what he says it essentially is. Now, the United States calls it federal Indian law, but he's saying that, nope, it's actually anti-Indian. It's really non-sovereignty. So Indians thinking that when they incorporate, they're going to work their way to sovereignty, you are deluding yourself. There is no sovereignty in that. There's just what the federal government calls sovereignty, which is non-sovereignty. It is a relic of native original free existence, restricted and dominated by the U.S. claim of plenary power. Okay, next. Oops, let's see. This is a long one. I'm taking forever to read it. Okay, so it's still just an introduction. We got this page and the next. And we're at 2.5 hour mark, so it might be maybe a 3.5 hour video. Okay. So the fourth goal of this book, what did he say? Was it a goal of the book? I'm sorry, what did I? The chapters in this book present, I keep saying represent, four interrelated arguments. Okay, it's the fourth argument. I'm sorry, fourth argument. Number four, federal anti-Indian law remains the basis for the ongoing U.S. invasions of native lands and domination of native people. So now he's taking it outside of America. And he's saying it's the basis for them going all around the world and doing this, basically. Because they already invaded our lands, right? To say all this somewhat more fully, federal anti-Indian law is not ordinary law. It is the suspension of law. Ooh, Indians need to be hearing this. Those who are trying to go by the law and trying to follow the rules. Do you hear what this lawyer is saying about those laws and those rules? They're bogus. You make the law as an Indian. To say all this somewhat more fully, federal anti-Indian law is not ordinary law. It is the suspension of law, an assertion by the U.S. government of unlimited authority over Native peoples and lands. The trilogy of decisions written by John Marshall assigned Native peoples and lands to the arena of U.S. congressional politics, thereby sanctioning whatever federal policies that a majority in Congress might concoct. They're making it up for you. They're making your laws when they were never supposed to. This is what permitted and sanctioned Indian removal. So you get me in your system and you want to remove me. What sense does that make? You go through all this trouble to make me a part of your system just to have me removed? Marshall ignored ordinary common law principles of land ownership and instead adopted what the law professor Kent McNeil has shown to be a misunderstanding of English law and crown powers. Wowers. Wowers. As we will see, the suspension of law, the exception, has made federal anti-Indian law a jurisprudential mess. Its legal theories are ambiguous and contradictory. Legal terms like trust relationship, oh Lord, and government-to-government relations have meanings in federal anti-Indian law diametrically opposed to what they mean in ordinary law. Well, that's what they did with the treaties. Our treaties are not like treaties made with other real nations, right? If the United States was to just suddenly null and void treaties they made with other real nations, it would be war, wouldn't it? If you decide on your own, you are one of a two entity agreement, and you decide, I'm not going to buy this no more. Do you not think that that would cause the one that you agreed with or made an agreement with to not come for you in some way, or to look at it as an act of war of some sort? I signed a treaty with you and you're not honoring it. You're going to dishonor it. Also, that means we're back to square one. That means we're at war with each other. But in the United States, when the United States all of a sudden declares that we're not doing treaties with Indians no more, they don't even expect us to fight back, because what? They're going to dominate us with the bullshit. But you see, in this awakening, this new era, that's not going to fly. It's going to show this federal government for what it really is: a colonizer occupying entity, here to collect a profit for its uplinks, the nobility, the clergy of the church, who are using America's resources as their personal piggy bank for generations of their, not ours. As we will see, the suspension of law, the exception, has made federal anti-Indian law a jurisprudential mess. Jurisprudential mess. Its legal theories are ambiguous and contradictory. Legal terms like trust relationship and government-to-government relations have meanings in federal anti-Indian law diametrically opposed to what they mean in ordinary law. They done made two different kinds of laws, y'all. This has been pointed out at the highest level of the U.S. judiciary by Justice Clarence Thomas, who said in United States versus Lara, 2004, federal Indian policy is, to say the least, schizophrenic. Professor Angelique Eaglewoman applied that same label in her critique of U.S. restraints on native economies when she said that federal policies schizophrenically have swung between imposing greater federal control of tribal resources and at the same time declaring a policy of tribal self-determination. So they're schizophrenic, bipolar. Professor Brian Wildenthal, in the conclusion to Native American Sovereignty on Trial, his compilation of these cases said, as the 21st century dawns, the story of Indian tribal governments and their place within the U.S. constitutional framework is becoming even more complex and paradoxical. This book will show that the often noted confusion in federal anti-Indian law arises from trying to view the field as a set of legal rules when federal anti-Indian law is, in fact, the suspension of law and rules, an exception from the rule of law. When we unpack the legal system that has entrapped and entangled non-state so-called tribal peoples worldwide, we will reveal a way forward for humanity in this 21st century moment of awareness and awakening that life on Earth is imperiled by dysfunctions of legal, political, and economic principles based on domination. In the final chapter, I take a global view, drawing some lessons from the long struggle for native survival and opening a vista for humanity to rearrange our relations with each other and with the planet that we share with the rest of creation. Despite the massive pressures arrayed against them, indigenous people still exist through what the Anishinaabe professor and writer Gerald Vizenor call survivance, survival and resistance, survivance. The Osage Cherokee law professor Renard Strickland lauded Native peoples for having learned the lesson of building and rebuilding a civilization, of adapting, of changing, and yet remaining true to certain basic values regardless of the nature of that change. Well, that's what people of color do every day. So-called people of color, the real American Indians, the misclassified American Indians, that's all we do routinely each and every day, okay? He said, at the heart of Indian values is an understanding and appreciation of the timeless of family, of tribe, of friends, of place, and of season. It is a lesson that white civilization has yet to learn. Strickland's remarks illuminate what the sociologist John Collier wrote in 1947 when he reflected on his experience as Bureau of Indian Affairs Commissioner in President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR's New Deal administration. Collier said, the deep cause of our world agony is that we have lost that passion and reverence for human personality and for the web of life and the earth which the American Indians have tended as a central sacred fire since before the Stone Age. Our long hope is to renew that sacred fire in us all. It is our only long hope. But the externals we have made our gods are in the saddle now. The foreign entities that we made our gods are in the saddles now. In our present crisis and out of inadequacy, we must try to sway the immediate event. How our timeless indigenous values that white civilization has yet to learn to be protected in the face of federal anti-Indian law, not only in the United States, but replicated throughout the world. That question guides this book. I offer it as a tool in what Muskogee Creek medicine teacher Philip Deere called a rightful education. So there we have just read the introduction to the book, Federal Anti-Indian Law by Peter DeRico. Here's his name if you want to look him up. Federal Anti-Indian Law, the Legal Entrapment of Indigenous Peoples by Peter DeRico. So let's see what our time is looking like. You know, we're at the 2:41 mark. And I did say that I would read a copy of my public declaration. I kind of want to, let me see, I'm not sure of my screen right now, but I want, what's going on? What's going on? Okay. So let's get to it. So this is my first official declaration that was published in the Queen's Chronicle. As of this month. Before we read, I'm going to say that it is a personal document, but I feel led to share it with you. It may give you an idea or, you know, to how you would like to word whatever you want to say about who you are as an American Indian and why you are not to be taxed, but furthermore, you're not to be held under what we just read about, this bogus federal anti-Indian law based on the Christian doctrine of discovery. That was the perfect segue for my American Indian Declaration. And now I will share this declaration with my viewers. I, Anthony Bryan Clements, am an American Indian proclaiming and reclaiming my birthright lineage and standing in the Americas, which predates the United States corporation government. I have expatriated from the United States citizenship as well as of September 2024. I am now superseding my New York State national status. My only lawful standing in any of the Americas, as well as Canada and the world, is as an American Indian who is a free birthright sovereign man. I am neither a Dawes roll, nor federal, nor state recognized, nor am I of the 5 civilized tribes Indians. The Iroquois Confederacy never had nor has the authority to represent or speak for myself as an Algonquin Indian. I reclaim my home, the land it's on, and all former Algonquin lands free of charge. And I only answer to peer federally misclassified Black Indians who stand outside the United States jurisdictions as myself, should I live freely outside of Algonquin lands. Though called Indian via colonization, I reserve right to self-identify due to the overwhelmingly bad faith in the United States and all of its affiliates. My tribe, known as the Pasquotank and part of the Wayapemeat Nation, was a sister tribe to the Powhatan Confederacy. We were, as I still am, an Algonquin first birthright man of the land. Evidence of my birthright sovereignty lies in the discovery of my tribe by the English prior to the creation of the United States in 1585. My people are said to have had an unwritten gentleman's agreement with the English, which is considered a form of a treaty in English law. A treaty is a contract between two or more sovereign nations. Therefore, I hereby reclaim my birthright sovereignty as my only lawful standing. I release myself and all peer Indians from all the spells against us permanently and in perpetuity. Oh man, I misspelled that. In perpetuity. Shall they return to senders? I hope I think I corrected it in the final version. I'm pretty sure I did. This was just like the version that was sent to me to proofread. And then I corrected the misspellings. So it wasn't in perpetuity, it's in perpetuity. And I'm sending the spells back to the senders. I just see us as being, it just occurred to me and I was moved to put this in my my proclamation declaration that we were under spells, and I'm sending them back to the senders. Okay. The original United States Constitution of 1787 was known as the Continental Constitution. In this Constitution, as well as in the 1789 and 1790 Constitutions, it is stated in Article 1, Section 2, representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to the respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed. Now we went over this, and it's written in a way that you really have to sit with it and read it to understand it. But like we said, basically representatives in Congress are going to be, and taxes of that state are going to be based on the number of citizens that are free persons. They're going to add those numbers to those bound to service for a term of years, but they're excluding Indians not taxed. So that means, as we said several times now, that Indians were not represented in Congress. If you're not represented in the legal system, it's because you're not in the jurisdiction of that legal system. And Indians really need to get that. And I think this would be something you might want to say in your personal declaration, which you will end up sending to the Pope and to your government officials, because you're going to have to let them know why they're not to tax you anymore. Okay. So we're going to, be discussing that in further videos, in future videos. This article establishes that American Indians are not represented in Congress because we are not to be counted in any state or federal census for representation in Congress or to be taxed in any way, shape, or form. To tax American Indians would be taxation without representation. Taxing American Indians is simply unconstitutional. As well as an American Indian, I am outside of the entire United States government system. This means the United States Corporation has no legal authority over me, nor am I bound to its laws, statutes, codes, rules, regulations, etc. Now, we just read that even their laws that are said to be applying to us do not really apply to us because they're anti-Indian and they are, what did he say? They're based on the doctrine of discovery, which is, it's a doctrine that has been denounced. So even the law that they made for us, which they weren't supposed to do that, we make our own laws if we're not in your system. You don't make law. Does the United States make laws for China? No, it doesn't. So why is the United States making laws for us when we are not counted to be represented in their Congress? It's because they breached our contract, y'all. They facilitated us being misclassified so that they can ignore the Constitution and start to take authority that they took from us. Again, as well as an American Indian, I am outside of the entire United States government system. This means the United States Corporation has no legal authority over me, nor am I bound to its laws, statutes, codes, rules, regulations, etc., etc., nor any of its presidents, federal, state, or international UN or United Nations executive orders, mandates, guidelines, suggestions, rulings of any kind. They don't apply to American Indians. We make our own rules. This is our land. Our rules will be law of the land. Right now, we're just swimming in an ocean of commerce. There is no law of the land, just commercial codes. I decree that no contract I have signed or may sign under duress, without full disclosure, or due to having no other alternative will have the effect of removing me from my sovereign standing now, permanently and in perpetuity. That means what I'm saying here is, even if I sign something because I had to, because I didn't have no alternative, it's not, I void the legal effect it will have on me because I'm not waiving my American birthright. I declare my immunity from waiving my American birthright to any entity, person, place, or thing, corporate, religious, man, woman, nobility, or otherwise. This is how they got us, y'all. A lot of this signing. But what I'm telling them is that if you're using my signature as a means to have me waive my birth, it's not going to work. I claim my birthrights. My birthright is not waivable. That is what my law is saying. I am law of the land. Who I just null and voided the effect, any negative effect my signature has in terms of removing me from my birthright. I have made it null and void. Do Indians understand what I just said? Just replay it. Just replay it. In the spirit of goodwill towards so-called indigenous people, displayed in documents like UNDRIP, I expect the full cooperation of any corporate and or government entity, such as the United States, its leaders, members or member nations of the United Nations, all of its agencies and offshoots, as well as its uplink owners, nobility and Catholic, or any religion's clergy. As the doctrine of discovery has been denounced by the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, I see no justification for the continuance of any subjugation under any corporation's nobility or clergy. I will have my own form of identification to show my American Indian sovereignty, my American Indian sovereign standing to any agents of the United States Corporation, and it is to be honored as such by all entities I may show it to. So once I create my own ID, telling this system that I'm an American Indian, not taxed, or whatever I want to say, that is it, y'all. They cannot drag me to any court. I am outside of their jurisdiction. Do Indians understand the power they have? Well, Heru just told you. Heru just told you. If you're not big enough to own that power, sleep on it, grow a little bigger, and take your birthright back. Now, mind you, there will be Indians, or there may be Indians that totally ridicule this. Even after we read that, that's why I read what I read before I read my declaration, because I know how Indians do. I know how we do. When we see an Indian reaching for his birthright, we become Indian crabs in a bucket, right? So they're gonna say, "Oh, you can't do that. Oh my God, he gonna go to jail." I promise you, that is not going to happen. Why? Because I know the power of my birthright. You don't, and that's the problem that for Indians who don't. Now, again, this already went public. So me reading it is no sweat off my back. It's in a damn newspaper. So no, I don't feel any kind of threats or anything. This thing has been made public, and it's going to go further than that. Okay. What will be the immediate effect is I will no longer be paying taxes. That's the immediate effect. The long-term effect is land ownership. Now, that book we just read, he's telling you it was all about land misappropriation, y'all. The doctrine of discovery was about taking your land. They weren't supposed to put our land in any trust because we didn't die. But of course, they killed us. That's why they put it in a trust. They're gonna have to bust open that trust, y'all, because it has to be dissolved. We will control that. You don't control anything. And we might rename it because we don't want to be our system to be confused with their system, given the illusion that they're still dominating us when they have no authority. They have no jurisdiction. The doctrine of discovery has been denounced, and we better grab onto that. Sing it from the rooftops. We read that again. This is why I wanted to start off reading from an attorney. He's trying to lead us to this, but it is up to us. You can't make the horse drink the water. You can only lead him to it. We have to make declarations like this or similar. And you cannot do this as a Moor, so just forget it. The minute you talk about being from Morocco, you have blown it. So Indians who think they're Moors, I suggest if you want your true authority, you can't do it by being a Moor. That is all bullshit. They are just a confused, another people that are confused by religion. That piece we just read in federal anti-Indian law is showing you that the religion is got this system all fucked up, thinking that they have authority based on that religion. That's the same thing with the Moors. They think they have authority based on Islam, okay? Which is a sister religion to Christianity. The same religion that took your land away from you. Now, the Moors want you to say you're a Moor so you can further divorce yourself from your land and have a crazy argument that will be struck down in these crazy courts because if you were an Indian, you shouldn't even be in their courts. If the Moors are telling you to go into their courts, you know already that Moor is misguiding you. He is misguiding you. They don't have jurisdiction. You don't go in their court. You tell their court, you send them court, put them on notice of who you are. That's what you do. You don't go into no courts. And I ain't trying to shame no Indian. I've done things that I wasn't supposed to do. How do I look trying to shame you? We all learning. So again, Indians that want to ridicule this, it is only to your own enslavement. Okay, stay a fucking slave. Because again, this already went public. I ain't trying to. I cannot be bothered by your negativity. Your slave mentality will not stop me. Okay. When homie said he want to be free, I meant that shit. But it was the ancestors that guided me to it. And I'm going forward, y'all. Once a number of Indians make declarations like this, then we can come together and we will have the authority of our birthright backing us. We already have Peter DeRico's book, right? He's citing cases that they're going to throw at us. Those cases don't apply. They came after the Constitution was written. The whole legal system came after the Constitution was written. You see, the Constitution was written in plain English, y'all. Then legalese came along, these bogus legal dictionaries, and redefined the words in the Constitution, making people now mean a state and making person mean a corporation. That's how they got the corporation to dominate you. And now all Indians think that the yellow brick road leads you to a corporation. You better get the hell out of that. You better get the hell out of that corporation and start standing on your birthright. So I will finish this, and as I promised, and we will close out this video. So I don't think I have much more to go. As the doctrine of discovery has been denounced by the leader of the Roman Catholic Church, I see no justification for the continued or continuance of any subjugation under any corporation's nobility or clergy. I'm following the breadcrumbs. I know who's really at the top of the corporation. It is the nobility and clergy. They are the ones who created it. And those entities stand in proxy for their domination. And those entities continue to have you waive your rights away just to work on their plantation. You have to waive your rights. They already took you out of your proper persona, as they call it. So really the Constitution doesn't apply to you, but they have you go even further. Like they have it where you can basically sign yourself away. And I'm saying that since I'm the law of the land as an American Indian, I'm telling them that even if I sign your sad little documents for whatever reason, it's null and void. You ain't taking away my birthright. We play your little game to a point. But your game doesn't take me out of my position. I know my position. Okay. And then we can talk reparations. Our reparations is going to be our land, yo, and we don't have to pay for anything. That is if you think it's far-fetched, go to your nearest immigrant motel and figure out what kind of car they're using. And when your Indian spirit jump back in your body, you're going to realize that's what you are supposed to have, Indian, and yours is free of charge. That's your reparations right there. Right there. What these cars that they're giving to these immigrants, that is exactly what we will have. The difference is ours is free of charge. We ain't paying that back. And it's going to be lifelong. Lifelong. You stolen us from us for lifetimes. So the penalty for that is, as long as you're in existence, you're gonna pay us. How so? We don't have to pay for anything. Repairs on your house, bills, clothes, doctor bills, dental bills, vacations, new house, new car. An Indian don't have to pay that. Not if you stand in your birthright. and know what is owed you. Everything was taken from you. You got to get out. Well, first you're going to have them stop taxing you. That's going to help a little bit. But we have to null and void everything. In other words, even using your money, it ain't going to have the laws that you have on your money don't apply to us. We don't pay interest rates. We don't pay taxes. You took us out of commerce and got us paying you. Figure out why you owe us everything. So I will have my own form of identification to show my American Indian sovereign standing to any agents of the United States Corporation. And it is to be honored as such by all entities I may show it to. The United States is to make all other corporate entities aware that this ID is fully valid and to be accepted. Any hindrance, delay, or hostile retaliation constitutes unlawful continued terrorizing and genocide of American Indians. This public notice is subject to additional content and or further edits. Also see the public notice video and this written statement as well as related information here. And I cite my YouTube channel as well as my Facebook, which I still have to update my YouTube channel because what I want to do is replace my welcome video with a reading of this document. So that'll be the first thing that starts playing on my channel. So there it is. Like it, love it, hate it. I ain't bothered by any of them feelings. Okay. I just did what I had to do. Okay. I did what was put on my heart by my ancestors to do. So thank you for watching. I went ahead and I decided it's time to share what I wrote. Now, you Indians might come up with some better ideas. That's fine. As long as you make it where it's you can make changes. Like say now you pay for the public notice or whatever. It's not cheap, y'all, but you got to ask yourself, what is the price of your freedom? Is there a price tag on it, or is it worth everything? It is worth everything to American Indians. So yeah, I paid for this. It was not cheap. But I needed it to say what I needed it to say. And I suggest that Indians who are interested in their birthright do the same. We don't, here's the thing, there is no format that Indians have to conform to. You are the law. Again, there is no format that you have to go by. You make it up. You can make it up. That is the power of your birthright. You're like a king or a queen. They came here based on a religion. You are doing this based on your birthright. You don't need a religion. They bulldozed over us with a religious doctrine. Had nothing to do with birthright. They voided our birthright. But now you stand on your birthright. The very thing they took from you is the very thing that will clobber them back to where they need to be, home. Because the only purpose this corporation has now to serve is to facilitate our restoration, handing over our land back to us. And Indians we will have to make the immigration laws. This is our land being used and abused. Your law about who gets to live here is what will fly. Yeah, it's a big task, y'all, but it's worth everything. It's what life is about. Because right now they got us as dead, lost at sea, and all of that. We do this peacefully because, again, we just read the words of a lawyer, y'all. And we all also read what the Constitution has to say. about us being outside of the jurisdiction of this federal government. Do the math, Indians, and you'll get it. Thank you for watching. Wish you peace, health, wealth, your land back, your identity back, and all the great things. Till next time.